Carmen Williams stood in the marble foyer of the Blackwood mansion, rainwater still dripping from her designer coat onto the pristine white floors. Her dark eyes swept across the faces of the family who had once welcomed her, before they chose sides. "You have 30 seconds to explain," she said, her voice steady despite the storm raging both outside and within her chest. "Why I shouldn't destroy everything you've built." Margaret Blackwood, the family matriarch, shifted uncomfortably in her silk evening gown, her fingers clutching the pearl necklace at her throat. Behind her, the rest of the Blackwood clan, cousins, siblings, in-laws, watched with barely concealed panic as the woman they'd underestimated stood before them like a queen pronouncing judgment. Thunder rolled across the estate as Carmen's phone buzzed with another notification. Another major investor pulling out, another board member demanding answers, another pillar of the Blackwood empire crumbling at her command. "Carmen, please," came a familiar voice from the grand staircase. She didn't turn around. She didn't need to see Alexander Blackwood's face to know it would be painted with the same desperate regret that had driven him to her apartment 3 hours ago, begging for forgiveness she was no longer sure existed in her heart. The woman standing beside Margaret, blonde, beautiful, and wearing the diamond bracelet that should have been Carmen's engagement gift, took a step forward. "This is ridiculous," Jennifer said, her voice dripping with false confidence. "You can't possibly think." "I can think whatever I want," Carmen interrupted, finally turning those fierce dark eyes on the mistress who'd stolen not just her fiancé, but her future. "The question is, what are you all willing to do to stop me?" The grandfather clock in the corner chimed midnight, and with it, Carmen Williams, brilliant, beautiful, and betrayed, began the countdown that would either restore her broken heart or reduce the most powerful family in the city to ash. But which would hurt more, their destruction, or the love she still felt burning in her chest every time Alexander whispered her name like a prayer he no longer deserved to say? 3 months earlier, Carmen had been the woman who lit up every room she entered. As head of strategic acquisitions at Williams & Associates, she'd built her own empire from nothing, a brilliant black woman who'd fought her way to the top of Manhattan's cutthroat business world. Her laughter had been Alexander's favorite sound, her ambition his greatest admiration. Alexander Blackwood, heir to a billion-dollar real estate dynasty, had fallen for her mind first, then her heart. Unlike the society women his family paraded before him, Carmen challenged him, inspired him, made him want to be worthy of the fierce love she gave so freely. He'd proposed on the rooftop of their first apartment building project together, the city sprawling beneath them like a promise of their shared future. Jennifer Morrison had arrived like a perfectly orchestrated accident, a Harvard MBA, society darling, and his mother's handpicked choice. She possessed everything Margaret Blackwood valued: the right bloodline, the right connections, the right shade of acceptable. When Carmen was traveling for business, Jennifer was there with homemade dinners and family stories. When Carmen worked late, Jennifer was there with gentle suggestions that maybe Alexander deserved someone who could truly prioritize family. Carmen's best friend and business partner, Maya Chen, had seen the warning signs first. "She's playing the long game, girl. Watch how she positions herself at every family event, how she remembers every detail Margaret shares about family values." But Carmen had trusted in love. She'd believed that what she and Alexander shared was unbreakable, until the night she returned early from a business trip to find Jennifer in her kitchen, wearing Alexander's Columbia University t-shirt and making breakfast like she belonged there. "It's not what it looks like," had been Alexander's first lie. "She needed a place to stay," had been his second. "You're overreacting," had been the one that shattered her heart completely. Margaret Blackwood had made her position clear at the family meeting that followed. Jennifer understands what it means to be a Blackwood wife. She knows how to support the family, how to present the right image. "Some people, dear, are just not suited for our world." The dismissal in the older woman's voice, the way she'd looked through Carmen like she was already gone, had been the spark that ignited something dangerous in Carmen's brilliant mind. The wedding announcement appeared in the New York Times Society pages 6 weeks later. Carmen read it while sipping coffee in her office, watching the morning sun cast long shadows across her mahogany desk. Alexander Blackwood to wed Jennifer Morrison in what the paper called the union of two of Manhattan's most prestigious families. No mention of the woman who'd spent 2 years planning a different future. No acknowledgement of the heart he'd shattered with his cowardice. No recognition that she'd ever existed in his world at all. Carmen set down her cup with surgical precision and opened her laptop. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she pulled up every file, every contract, every business dealing she'd ever shared with the Blackwood family. The strategic partnerships she'd facilitated. The insider knowledge she'd gained. The trust they'd placed in her brilliant mind. They'd dismissed her as just another discarded girlfriend. They were about to learn she was so much more. Within an hour, she'd made 3 phone calls that would change everything. The first was to David Chen, Maya's brother and one of the most ruthless corporate lawyers in the city. The second was to Robert Sterling, a private investigator who specialized in high society scandals. The third was to Alexander's college roommate, Marcus, who'd always harbored feelings for Carmen and had been waiting years for the chance to prove the Blackwoods weren't worthy of her. "I want you to help me take them down," she told Marcus, her voice steady as steel. "All of them." "What about Alexander?" Marcus asked quietly. "Do you still love him?" Carmen stared out at the city below, at the empire of glass and steel where she'd once dreamed of building a life with the man who'd chosen comfort over courage. "That," she whispered, "is exactly why this is going to hurt so beautifully." The campaign began subtly, elegantly, like Carmen herself. She leveraged every connection she'd made in 5 years of building her business, calling in favors with the precision of a chess grandmaster. Media contacts began investigating the Blackwood family's business practices. Environmental groups questioned their latest development project's impact on protected wetlands. Labor unions raised concerns about worker conditions at their construction sites. But the most devastating moves were personal. Carmen had remembered everything, every family secret shared during intimate dinners, every business vulnerability Alexander had confided during pillow talk, every weakness Margaret had revealed during their bonding sessions. The Swiss account that hid family tax avoidance. The bribes that had secured city permits. The intimidation tactics used against small business owners who wouldn't sell their properties. Alexander began showing up at her office, desperate and disheveled in ways that reminded her painfully of the man she'd fallen in love with. "Please, Carmen. Let's talk about this. Jennifer, it's not real. The engagement, the wedding plans, my family orchestrated everything. I was weak, I was scared, but I never stopped loving you." She looked up from her computer, where she was reviewing the documents that would expose his family's decades of corruption, and felt her heart crack open all over again. He looked broken, haunted, like a man watching his world collapse in real time. "You chose them," she said simply. "When it mattered, when I needed you to choose me, you chose the easier path." "I'm choosing you now," he pleaded, dropping to his knees beside her desk. "Every day since that night, I've regretted letting you walk away. Cancel the wedding, Carmen. Run away with me. We'll start over, build something new, something that's just ours." For a moment, she wavered. The love was still there, burning bright and painful in her chest. She could see their old future flickering in his desperate eyes. Morning coffee in bed, business meetings that turned into make-out sessions, the dream of building an empire together. Then her phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "Heard you've been harassing my fiancé. Some women just can't accept when they're not wanted anymore. Maybe it's time you found someone more suitable to your background." Carmen showed Alexander the message, watching his face crumble as he read his fiancé's casual cruelty. "She doesn't speak for me," he whispered. "But you're still going to marry her," Carmen replied. "Because that's who you are, Alexander. When push comes to shove, you'll always take the path that keeps your family happy and your inheritance secure." He left without another word, and Carmen returned to her computer, her resolve hardened into something unbreakable. The first major domino fell on a Tuesday. The New York Attorney General announced an investigation into Blackwood Enterprises' business practices, citing evidence of systemic fraud, environmental violations, and worker exploitation. The family's stock price plummeted 30% in a single day. Carmen watched the news coverage from her office, feeling no satisfaction in the chaos she'd unleashed. Maya found her there at midnight, surrounded by empty coffee cups and the scattered plans of her revenge. "You look like hell," Maya observed, settling into the chair across from Carmen's desk. "I feel like hell," Carmen admitted. "Is it wrong that I want them to suffer? But seeing Alexander's face on the news tonight. God, Maya, I still love him. Even after everything, I still love him." Maya studied her best friend's face, seeing the exhaustion and pain Carmen tried so hard to hide. "You know what I think? I think this was never really about revenge." "What do you mean?" "I think this is about making them see you. Really see you. You're not trying to destroy Alexander. You're trying to save him from his own family. You're trying to show him what real strength looks like, what real love requires." Carmen leaned back in her chair, considering Maya's words. "And if he doesn't choose me? If he marries Jennifer anyway?" Then at least you'll know you fought for something real instead of accepting the scraps they were willing to throw you. That night, Carmen made a decision that would change everything. She called Alexander, her heart hammering as she listened to the phone ring. "Carmen." His voice was raw with exhaustion and hope. "Meet me at our place," she said quietly. "One last time. We need to talk." Their place was the rooftop where he'd proposed, where they'd dreamed their biggest dreams and shared their deepest fears. Alexander was already there when she arrived, standing at the edge with the city lights painting his face in gold and shadow. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said without turning around. "But you did." She moved to stand beside him, close enough to feel his warmth, far enough away to keep her resolve. "You chose their approval over our love, and that hurt me in ways I'm still discovering." "I was terrified," he confessed. "Of losing them, of being cut off, of having to build something from nothing. You made it look so easy, being brave, being strong, fighting for what you wanted. I wasn't brave enough to be worthy of you." Carmen felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "You could have been. If you'd trusted me, trusted us, we could have built something beautiful together. We could have been unstoppable." Alexander finally turned to face her, and she saw the man she'd fallen in love with, vulnerable, brilliant, and completely broken by his own choices. "Is it too late?" he whispered. "Can you ever forgive me?" Carmen looked into his eyes and made the most honest confession of her life. "I never stopped loving you, Alexander. Not for a single moment. But love isn't enough anymore. You have to choose me. Not just tonight, not just in private, but in front of your family, in front of the world. You have to choose the hard path, the uncertain path, the path that might cost you everything they've ever given you. And if I do?" She smiled through her tears, fierce and beautiful and terrifying in her power. "Then we build our own empire. Together." The wedding was scheduled for Saturday at the Blackwood family estate. On Thursday, Alexander stood in Margaret's study, the matriarch's cold eyes boring into him as he struggled to find the words that would change everything. "I can't marry Jennifer," he finally said. Margaret's teacup clinked against its saucer with surgical precision. "Excuse me. I'm still in love with Carmen. I've been in love with her this entire time. Marrying Jennifer would be a lie, and I won't live that lie anymore." The silence that followed was arctic. Margaret rose from her chair, moving to the window that overlooked the estate's manicured gardens where workers were already setting up for the wedding that would never happen. "That woman has poisoned your mind," she said finally. "Look around you, Alexander. Look at what she's done to our family. The investigations, the media scrutiny, the investors fleeing like rats from a sinking ship. She's systematically destroying everything we've built, and you want to reward her with marriage. She's trying to save me from becoming you." Alexander shot back, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. Margaret turned, her face a mask of arctic fury. "I beg your pardon." "You heard me. Carmen is trying to show me what it means to fight for something real, something worth having. All my life, you've taught me that image matters more than truth, that reputation is more valuable than integrity. But Carmen built something real from nothing. She fought for every success, earned every victory, and she did it without compromising her soul. And where has her integrity gotten her?" Margaret's voice dripped venom. "Alone. Discarded. Watching the man she claims to love marry another woman. Only because I was too much of a coward to choose her when it mattered." Margaret moved closer, her voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "If you walk away from Jennifer, if you choose that woman over your family's wishes, you will be cut off completely. No trust fund. No inheritance. No position in the company. You will have nothing but your pathetic infatuation and whatever scraps she's willing to throw you." Alexander felt something break open inside him, something that had been locked away since childhood. "Then I'll have everything that matters." He turned to leave, but Margaret's final words stopped him cold. "She doesn't want you anymore, Alexander. My sources tell me she's been seen with Marcus Rivera quite frequently lately. Dinner dates, intimate conversations, long walks through Central Park. Perhaps your precious Carmen has finally found a man with the courage you lack." The words hit Alexander like physical blows. Marcus, his former roommate, the one who'd always harbored feelings for Carmen, the one who'd never hidden his disapproval of how Alexander had treated her. The thought of Carmen in another man's arms, sharing the laughter that had once been his, building a future with someone who deserved her brilliance. Doubt crept in like poison. What if his mother was right? What if Carmen's revenge had included moving on completely? What if he was about to sacrifice everything for a woman who no longer wanted him? Friday night, 12 hours before his wedding to Jennifer, Alexander sat in his penthouse with a bottle of scotch and a heart full of cowardice. His phone buzzed with a text from Carmen. "It's not too late. Choose love, Alexander. Choose us." But Margaret's words echoed in his mind, and for the first time since this all began, Alexander Blackwood chose the safe path. He turned off his phone and went to bed, resigned to a future that felt like death. Carmen stood outside the Blackwood estate at 11:47 p.m. on Friday night, rain soaking through her coat as she stared up at Alexander's childhood bedroom window. No light. No sign that the man she loved was awake, wrestling with the choice that would define the rest of their lives. Maya stood beside her, holding an umbrella that did nothing to shield them from the storm. "He's really going through with it. Looks like it." Carmen's voice was steady, but Maya could see the devastation in her friend's eyes. His mother played her final card perfectly. "Made him believe I'd moved on with Marcus. Why don't you just tell him the truth? That Marcus has been helping with the investigation, nothing more." Carmen laughed bitterly. "Because he should trust me enough not to need an explanation. He should know me well enough to realize I don't move on from love like changing clothes. But he doesn't, Maya. After everything we shared, he still doesn't really know me." Thunder rolled across the sky as Carmen pulled out her phone, scrolling to a message she'd typed but never sent. Her final play. The one that would either save them both or destroy her completely. "What are you doing?" Maya asked, giving him one last chance to be brave. Carmen hit send, then turned and walked away from the estate, away from the man who'd chosen safety over soul, away from the future they'd dreamed together on starlit rooftops. The message was simple. The wedding is in 13 hours. If you're there, I'll know who you really are. If you're not, I'll be waiting at our place at sunset, ready to build something beautiful with the man I fell in love with. Choose carefully, Alexander. This time, there are no second chances. Inside the mansion, Alexander's phone buzzed on his nightstand, ignored and silent in the darkness. But in the room across the hall, Margaret Blackwood read every word of Carmen's message on her son's tablet. The device she'd been monitoring for weeks, gathering intelligence on the woman who dared to challenge her family's supremacy. Margaret smiled coldly and deleted the message before Alexander would ever have a chance to see it. Some choices, she decided, were too important to leave to the weak-hearted. The Blackwood wedding was everything Margaret had envisioned. 300 of Manhattan's elite gathered in the estate's rose garden, crystal and champagne catching the afternoon sunlight, Jennifer radiant in French lace that cost more than most people's homes. Alexander stood at the altar like a man attending his own funeral. Carmen watched from her office building across the city, tracking the society live streams on her computer while her phone remained stubbornly silent. No last-minute declaration. No desperate race to choose love over obligation. Just the hollow confirmation that she'd loved a man too weak to love her back. "The bride and groom will now exchange vows," the officiant announced. Alexander opened his mouth to speak the words that would seal his fate forever, and stopped. In the crowd of familiar faces, he saw something that made his heart stop. Marcus Rivera, sitting near the back, alone, checking his phone with the distracted air of a man with somewhere else to be. Not with Carmen. Not as her date. Just there. "Alexander." Jennifer whispered, her perfect smile faltering. But Alexander was remembering everything with crystal clarity. Carmen's laugh when she'd told him about Marcus helping with her investigation. "He's a good friend, Alexander, nothing more. He's actually been trying to help me understand why you're worth fighting for." The way she'd rolled her eyes at his jealousy. "Trust me, if I wanted to make you jealous, I'd choose someone who wasn't head over heels for his pediatrician girlfriend." Marcus had been helping her. Not dating her. Not replacing him. His mother had lied. Carmen had been fighting for them this entire time, and he'd been too much of a coward to fight back. "I can't do this," Alexander said suddenly, his voice carrying across the garden like a thunderclap. Jennifer's bouquet dropped to the ground with a whisper of silk and petals. "Alexander," Margaret hissed from the front row. "Don't you dare." "I'm sorry, Jennifer. I'm sorry to everyone here. But I can't marry you. I love someone else. I've always loved someone else. And I've been a coward and a fool, but I won't be either of those things for one more second." He stepped back from the altar, looking directly at his mother. "You lied to me about Carmen and Marcus. You deleted her messages. You've been manipulating this entire situation because you'd rather see me miserable than see me happy with someone you can't control." Margaret's face went white with rage. "If you walk away from this altar, you are no son of mine." Alexander smiled, feeling free for the first time in months. Then I guess I'm finally my own man. He ran. Through the garden, past the shocked guests, past the photographers capturing his rebellion for posterity. He ran to his car, to the city, to the rooftop where he'd proposed to the woman who'd never stopped believing he could be brave. Carmen was there, of course. Standing at the edge with the sunset painting her in gold. More beautiful than any society princess, stronger than any empire, braver than he'd ever dreamed of being. "You came," she said without turning around. "I almost didn't." His voice broke on the admission. "My mother, she made me believe you'd moved on. That you didn't want me anymore." Carmen finally turned to face him, and he saw tears streaming down her face. "Alexander, I've been fighting for us this entire time. Everything I did, the investigation, the pressure on your family, the systematic dismantling of their control over your life, it was all to save you. To save us. I know that now." He moved closer, afraid she might disappear if he reached for her too quickly. "Can you forgive me? For being weak, for choosing wrong, for almost throwing away the best thing that ever happened to me." Carmen studied his face, seeing the man she'd fallen in love with finally, truly choosing her. "Are you ready for what comes next? Your family will cut you off. You'll lose everything they ever gave you. We'll have to build from nothing." Alexander dropped to one knee, pulling out the ring he'd carried in his pocket every day since she'd walked away. Not the ostentatious diamond his mother had chosen, but the simple, perfect solitaire he'd picked out himself, the one that captured light like Carmen's eyes when she laughed. "Carmen Williams," he said, his voice steady and sure for the first time in months, "will you help me build something beautiful? Will you marry a man who finally learned that loving you is the only brave thing he's ever done?" She looked down at him, this brilliant, flawed, finally courageous man who'd chosen love over comfort, truth over tradition, her over everything else. "Yes," she whispered, and then louder, fierce with joy, "Yes, Alexander. Let's build our own empire." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, the city spread out beneath them like a promise of all the tomorrows they'd fight for together. 6 months later, Carmen stood in the penthouse office of Williams and Blackwood Enterprises, watching the sun set over a city that finally belonged to them both. The view was spectacular, almost as spectacular as the justice they'd served. The Blackwood family investigations had resulted in criminal charges, frozen assets, and a corporate restructuring that removed Margaret from power permanently. Alexander had testified against his own family's corruption, helping to ensure that decades of exploitation finally faced consequences. Jennifer had married a senator's son within 3 months, apparently having recovered from her heartbreak with remarkable speed. "Mrs. Blackwood," Alexander said, wrapping his arms around his wife from behind, "you look thoughtful." "I was just thinking about Margaret's face at the courthouse," Carmen admitted, leaning back into his warmth. "When she realized that everything she'd done to keep us apart had actually brought us closer together. Do you ever regret it? The way we had to fight for this?" Carmen turned in his arms, studying the face she loved more than her own life. Alexander looked older now, marked by the struggles they'd weathered together, but also happier. Freer. Finally and completely himself. "Never," she said firmly. "Easy love isn't real love, Alexander. What we have, what we built together in the fire, that's unbreakable." Their company was thriving, built on the foundation of genuine partnership and mutual respect his family had never understood. They specialized in affordable housing and community development, using their combined skills to create something that mattered beyond profit margins. "I have news," Alexander said, pulling her closer. "The final adoption papers came through today." Carmen's breath caught. The Williams Foundation for Underprivileged Youth, the charity they'd started with the first million from their company, had been trying to finalize the adoption of 3 siblings whose parents had died in an accident. "Really?" she whispered. "Really? Marcus called this morning. Tommy, Sarah, and little Maya will be home with their new family by Christmas." Carmen felt tears sliding down her cheeks, but these were tears of joy. They'd built something beautiful from the ashes of betrayal, not just a business, not just a marriage, but a legacy of helping others fight for their own dreams. "I love you," she said, meaning it more than she'd ever meant anything in her life. "I love you too," Alexander replied, kissing her forehead with reverent tenderness. "Thank you for never giving up on us. Thank you for teaching me what real strength looks like." As the last light faded from the sky, Carmen Williams Blackwood stood in the arms of the man who'd finally learned to choose love over fear, surrounded by the empire they'd built together, brick by brick, choice by choice, heart by heart. Margaret Blackwood had been right about one thing. Carmen wasn't suitable for their world. She was too strong, too brilliant, too magnificent for anything less than a love that moved mountains and changed lives. And in the end, that love had conquered everything. What would you have done in Carmen's place? Tell us your favorite love story in the comments. Hit the like button if you believe in love that fights back.